Welcome everyone, and if it wasn't for technical difficulties, what would we have? But we're very thankful for Laura Torres for entertaining us over here on this end while we got going. So, welcome everyone. We have a couple of special guests with us today. We have Judge Baker from Logan County, and also I want to welcome our new board member that's here with us today in the room, Kelly Johnson from Carpenter Company, Russellville, Logan County. Welcome, Kelly. As a housekeeping note, I would just remind all board members to keep your cameras on for the meeting. And if you are voting, please state your name before you vote. That way we know who you are. Also, since we have a number of guests and visitors today, just point out that there are several voting actions that will occur and only board members need to vote on those actions. Thank you very much.
All right, me?
You.
Okay, all right. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see everybody. We welcome our board members and our guests. The focus of today's board meeting is going to be on strategic goal number 4, which is, quote, maintain viability of the South Central Workforce Development Board's financial growth, quality delivery system, and return on investment for job seekers and employers. October is really a good time to focus on this particular strategic goal. Today, you're going to hear from Taylor Polson & Company about the results of our recent external audit. We're going to subsequently highlight several steps that we're going to take to improve our financial and bookkeeping practices. We will also discuss our budget that was recently approved by our judge executives, review our WIOA performance for program year 23, and identify several major administrative actions that are on the horizon. And as always, we're going to sprinkle in highlights of other activities we've been doing from our other strategic goals. So that's a quick primer on what you can expect in today's meeting. And with that, I'll again welcome everybody and turn it back over to our board chair.
Okay. Our first order of business this morning is to approve the April 11th board minutes. Board members should have received, read and reviewed those minutes. Are there any comments on those minutes? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
I'll thank you, Justin. Second by Teresa. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. The next item of business is the executive committee updates from September 12th. We met and covered the agenda items that you see on the screen. Here are a few highlights from our meeting on September 12th. The executive committee approved a compensation study proposal from Trump and Associates at the cost of $8,800. The compensation results will be delivered by November 14th. And when determining those executive level salaries, we are required to utilize a compensation study to inform any of our decisions. So the last compensation study was done in February of 2021. So it was definitely time to update that. John provided an update on the progress of the external audit being conducted by Taylor Polson & Company, the workforce turning point presentation, the recent Kentucky Career Center job fair, and several funding updates. And John will cover those 4 topics later on in the agenda. Are there any questions or comments regarding our meeting, our executive committee meeting? Okay, I'll turn it back over to John.
Okay, all right, thank you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a moment and just set the stage for the rest of the discussion today. And again, immediately after this agenda item, we're going to get into the audit. But I wanted to kind of set up the audit discussion by talking about our different organizations. So, because we're more than just the South Central Workforce Development Board. Many of our long-term board members, you know this. So some of this will be a little bit redundant, or you've heard it before, but I just want to do a quick primer on this. So first of all, we are the South Central Workforce Development Board. As you see on your screen, we are statutorily created. We've got 23 board members. Those board members come from all 10 counties, and the majority of our board members are from the business/employer community, because we are designed to be an employer-driven organization. When we were created, as we were stood up and created, there was an employment services agreement that was put in place with SDKY Foundation. SDKY Foundation was established simultaneously with the board. So if you'll build one, Brian. So SDKY Foundation, that's the name of our 501c3 that was built in conjunction with the board. It was established as a nonprofit. And again, there's an employment services agreement between the two organizations. The SDKY Foundation does business as Employwork. We just, instead of that really long SDKY Foundation for Workforce Development, we've shortened it to Employwork, but it's one and the same. They're synonymous. And what employer has always been, is established as a foundation. So it was always meant to help us diversify our funding. Because we can take in more than just federal WIOA funding. And so it's these two organizations have been linked from the very beginning. And let's build one more. So examples of what we do with Employwork. We've got multiple grants and or contracts that are not WIOA coming through Employwork. We've got a contract with Kentucky Adult Ed for the Putting Kentuckians First program. We've got two separate refugee grants we're managing right now. Our New American Navigator is funded by the city of Bowling Green and Warren County. They provide that funding and it comes in through Employwork. Whenever we do a lot of hiring events, some are paid, some are unpaid. If it's a paid hiring event, we're running that through Employwork. And taking in that revenue through Employwork. And then we've got some other niche things we're doing revenue wise. Most recently we've done some document translation for an employer to help them document or to help them translate some of their flyers from English to Spanish. And we've done that as a paid service. We have another nonprofit that was established by my predecessor in late 2019, and it's called My Workforce Future. Again, nonprofit, has its own separate board of directors, and really, you can kind of see the mission statement. We focused that organization to help prepare people for the workforce. It was originally established as an apprenticeship intermediary. So we're still doing some of that work. We're doing some internship work, and we're doing some specialized training programs through My Workforce Future. So examples, you guys have heard about our Work Ready boot camps. We've actually got one going on this week again in Logan County. We're putting through over the course of 5 days. My Workforce Future is coordinated for folks in the Logan County Detention Center to get an OSHA 10 certification, first aid CPR, defibrillator certifications, financial literacy, and soft skills. That's all being done through My Workforce Future. Your Turn internships, which I'm going to talk about. That's our program at Fort Campbell where we can take service members in the last 180 days and place them with a company. We just act as an intermediary to match the employer and the service member. And that last bullet, we occasionally get people that come in here and say, "Hey, I need to get my high school diploma translated or some official documentation translated from Spanish to English or another language." That's something that we'll do for folks. Usually $25 would be pretty low cost to help them get a document translated. If those documents help them, if they need to provide a graduation, something that proves they graduated from high school as part of their employment process, we want to make sure that we do that for them. So anyway, those are the three organizations. And the reason I bring that up, if you want to go ahead and build again, Brian, when you hear Jeff present the audit results, you're going to hear him talk about WIOA and non-WIOA. So the audit that was conducted focused on the board and on employer. The audit did not include My Workforce Future. And so Jeff is going to talk about WIOA and non-WIOA. And the non-WIOA, when he mentions non-WIOA, it's really all that activity that's going on through Employwork. And just as one more bit of information for everybody, we have two separate bank accounts. This is also a way to help clarify some of this. we have a bank account that specifically handles all the federal public funding through WIOA. And then we have what we call our private account. And that's really associated with employer. That's any money that comes in that's not WIOA, we push through that. Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to mix our federal WIOA dollars with all these other dollars. So we keep that, just in terms of banking, we keep all that separate as well. Okay, that's the setup. Barring any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jeff Carter with Taylor Paulson and Company, and he's going to provide a summary of our recent audit.
Thank you, John. I'm sorry I was getting in here a little late. Do you have the slides of this of the audit, or do you just want me to go over the audit letter, John?
Brian, I think there should be some slides. There we go.
Okay, thank you. So on the audit, and I think Rhonda sent out a copy of the audit to everybody. It was in
It did go, yes, Jeff, it did go out.
Okay. So the only thing I'm going to point out in that report is on the page 3, 4, and 5 of that. That is their actual reports, or 3 through 6 is their actual report. And the report basically on the first page gives the opinion in the second paragraph, and that was as John says here on this, a unmodified or a clean or a unqualified opinion, which means it is a clean opinion. It means that the audit presents everything that happened with the Workforce Development Board during the year that was presented on there. Okay. And then as we move through, the audit laid out after that into the financial statements, management discussion analysis, and different financial statements that were in there, and it shows the results on that. But it pulls to the back, the other reports in the back, which is the summary. And as he's got it there, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses have been identified in the audit. There's no non-compliance that we noted in the audit. There's no material weaknesses with federal award programs, which is the WIOA and the non-WIOA. There was 2 grants that are non-WIOA, the refugee grants that were reported. And there's no other findings that we are required to report on as far as findings with it. What I will point out in this organization is you have around $2.6 million in federal funding that was spent last year, of which 2.5 was WIOA funding. And then the other remaining funds were for the refugee grants and non-WIOA funding. Those require the federal reports. The other deal on it that we went over, and we went over this report in detail with the audit committee a week or so ago. The other thing that we pointed out to the audit committee, that there was some improvements that were needed, some recommendations to improve bookkeeping and oversight. I've spoken with John since then and seen some stuff that has been addressed. There's been some approval has been changed, the approval process to clearly delineate which is WIOA and non-WIOA fundings. There was a couple of instances, I think about 4 instances where sales tax was repaid on some. And since you're a nonprofit, you're exempt from paying sales tax. Those actually happened on some reimbursements, so just needs to pay a little attention to that. And he's got on there to develop the improvement plan. There's another little letter that talks about that I have, and it talks about that there was no. We went over this with the audit committee, that there was no difficulties in performing our audit. There was 4 journal entries that had to be made. Most of these journal entries are the same entries that are made from year to year. The representation letter has been signed. And there's no other audit issues really to cover than what I've taught. John, do you have any questions or you want me to cover anything else in more detail?
Well, I guess we'll open it up for questions
Okay.
for everybody. And then Rebecca, I'll come to you in a second as our audit chair and see if you have any observations as well. All right, if there's no questions about what Jeff has covered, Rebecca? Any observations from your perch as the audit chair?
No, I think that as we went over the audit, some of the improvements that Jeff recommended had already been started on by the group. And I think that they will continue on, and those recommendations will be improved, and some reporting about that improvement will happen too. That's all. So I think that I'd like to make a motion to approve the 23 external audit results as conducted and presented by Taylor Polson and Company CPAs.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second?
A second.
Josh Anderson.
Thank you, Josh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
All right, awesome. Big
Thank
sigh
you.
of,
John,
Yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can I say one thing too?
yes, sir.
It was a pleasure working with you all this past year, you and Deronda, and getting the information. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the board and the confidence in us and in performing this audit. And to any of the board members that have this audit report, if you start looking at it and have any specific questions, you can contact us here at the office. And I'll be happy to go over that in more detail with you if you have any specific questions concerning the audit report.
All right, thank you, Jeff. It was a pleasure working with you as well. This is our first year working with Jeff and his team. We had switched to auditors this year, and so it's never easy to do that because it was a time intensive endeavor for everybody because they had to kind of learn the nuances of what we do and how we operate, and that took a lot of reading and a lot of meetings and explanation. And it didn't help that our non-WIOA activities significantly increased this last year, so there was a lot for them to look at and digest. And as mentioned, part of the audit feedback from Jeff and his team was that our WIOA practices were really, really good. Our non-WIOA practices, there was room for improvement. So what you see on this agenda item, I'll go over it. Some of the things that that we discussed that we needed to do. So one, and what happened over the summer as we started this audit process, it became clear that the cover sheets we had been using to communicate, what happens is everything we spend money on, we have to take that invoice, we have to put a cover sheet on it, we have to submit it to our fiscal agent, Hollid and Mary Ellen in Chicago, and then they have to take it, and they do all of you think of them as our CFO, they take all of that, package it up, and then they run the reimbursement process for all spending back over to the state. But it became clear that our cover sheets were not clearly communicating what was happening here, and we needed to make some revisions to that, and I'll talk about that more in a second. It also, one of the recommendations is that we need to pick up our frequency on how often we're communicating back and forth with our fiscal agent. And so we've established a monthly internal financial audit meeting. And that's between me, Holland, Mary Ellen, and Deronda. Deronda does our bookkeeping. And so we're picking up the frequency on that. A very simple fix was we needed to get a stamp that said paid. And so that's been purchased. A big stamp, and Deronda's having a lot of fun with that. We also decided to adjust a financial meeting that we have also with career team. And so we've adjusted that from bi-weekly to monthly. We think we're in a good place to do that. Jeff mentioned tax exempt status. And so we've got to do we've got thousands of transactions going on. And so, yeah, we have paid taxes occasionally when we shouldn't have. So we've got to pay closer attention to that. We've actually got to set up ourselves as a vendor with Sam's and Walmart or any other places we do business. So there's going to be a process there, but Deronda's already gotten a good start on that. And then the last one was we really need to get a QuickBooks subscription for all the non-WIOA activity. And so we've already been in discussion with National Able about that. In fact, last night, Holland sent Deronda and I, he sent us a link to the version of QuickBooks we need to get. So we're going to pick that up. It's going to cost us, I think, about $80 a month, but we're going to use QuickBooks to better track all of our non-WIOA spending, and it'll take it and it'll package it much better for us. And I think Jeff will be much happier next year when we do our audit. So all those things are, most of those things are complete or going to be complete soon. On the right is just a very quick example of an invoice, a cover sheet. And so it's a good example that shows you like we've got all these different funding streams and we've got to charge off to them. And so what you're looking at here is this is one of probably 20 or 30 invoices I sign every week. This is a payment to MedCenter Health. We have an agreement with MedCenter Health for an offsite clinic service. And so what happens is that, our employees we pay for that for our employees, but you can see here, for our WIOA funded employees of the $304 that was due last month, we charged off 176 of it to the WIOA, 48 of it to the tornado grant. And then you can see REAP, KOR, and youth career coach, various amounts charged off of them. And so we take the invoice for MedCenter Health, but we have to put this cover sheet on it, and then we've got to get this to our fiscal agent so that at their level, they're charging off to each of these respective grants in the right amount. And so this is a new and improved cover sheet that has really helped clarify what National Able needs to do in terms of charging off to these various grants. Okay. Barring any questions, we can move this thing forward. Okay, so the next agenda item, number 8, is just a quick update. So this first one, this is the first of a couple of slides. Bottom line is our judge executives approved our budget for our annual budget. But to set this conversation up very quickly for everybody, this is again a little bit of a reminder. In terms of WIOA, which is the primary source of funding we get, that money gets Congress makes a determination of how much gets put in the budget. Every state gets a percentage of it based on a formula. So the money moves, Congress appropriates it. The Department of Labor uses a formula to determine how much the state of Kentucky gets. And then at the Education and Labor Cabinet, they use that same formula to determine how much each local area gets. We have 10 local areas in the state. We typically rank number 9 in terms of funding. We're on the low end of the funding. Let's build one.
So we're number 1 with style.
Yeah, yes, we are. Okay, so we have an interlocal agreement, and in that interlocal agreement with our 10 judge executives, it says there, and it's highlighted number 5, that our judge executives approve our annual budget. That's one of the functions that judge executives have. They have is oversight of the budget. You can see that they also appoint board members. They're the ones that select a fiscal agent. So really, judge executives' role in this is really one of there's a lot of fiscal oversight in what we do. Okay, and build one more. So when we talk about them approving the budget, they're really approving that budget, the WIOA budget, or anything that comes from WIOA. So on September 11th, I met with our judge executives and presented the budget that I'm going to show you, and ultimately they approved it. But what I'll point out here is, and you'll see this in more detail, the budget they approved was WIOA, Tornado, the electric vehicle grant, and the Quest grant. Those are all forms of WIOA. I've got 5 other funding revenue streams that we've got that they did not approve. 2 REAP grants, the money from the state for the youth position, the local money. So really, I just really isolated. Here's the budget you're going to approve. Anything that's WIOA flavored, that's what they approved, and that's what I'll show you. And then as a last note, that WIOA, it has to fund our operations here at the board level. It has to fund career team. It funds the career team contract. So Matt and his entire team. It has to fund our fiscal service agent contract. That's National Label out of Chicago, and it funds our one-stop operator contract, which is Frank Garabata. So that 1.475 million you see up there, that's to fund a lot of people and a lot of activities, and we've got to touch that, and that's why it's so important to have other revenue streams come in to help us do what we need to do. Okay, so what was approved? Here's a busy slide with a lot of numbers, but you can see at the top WIOA, the different lines of WIOA, adult dislocated worker youth, and how much was the total allocation. And you can see how much Tornado, Quest, and EV workforce battery money that we've got for this year. A total of 2.6 is the total WIOA flavored allocation that we've got. And then off to the right, and I'll get into more details, how much stays at the board level, how much goes down to career team. So let's build one. So at the board level, you can see, a budget of 779,000 and how it's broken out in terms of salary, fringe, rent, and so forth. And if you'll build one more, when we look at career team's budget, here's a breakout of what they're going to do with that money. So they, career team gets a 10% administrative fee right off the top. And then the remainder of that money gets divided up between direct services and participant allocation. So direct services is the amount of money that career team has to pay their staff and their fringe and their travel and all the things that they need to do to case manage their clients. And then there's a participant allocation and how much. So you can see in terms of WIOA, how much WIOA, how much Tornado, how much Quest is going down to participants. And that's how it, this basically shows how all that divides out. So anyway, that was the budget that I went over with the judge executives, and that was the budget they approved. And I'm just presenting it to you today as information. All right. If there are no questions about this, we'll keep on trucking. And so, as always, our budget is not static. So, just in the last 10 days, there's a couple of things I'll highlight. Let's go, Bill Brian.
Oops, my 2 guys still got stuck.
Yeah. Okay, so yesterday, I got a notice. I had some back and forth with the Education and Labor Cabinet. They had told me there was some additional Quest monies. And ultimately yesterday, they told me that we're going to get an additional $75,800 for Quest. And we're using this to fund the Work Ready Boot Camp programming with our detention centers. We also had, probably almost 3 months ago, we submitted for a statewide reserve grant. I actually did this in conjunction with the Lincoln Trail, Cumberland, and Bluegrass Workforce Board. All 4 of us got together and we each asked for $30,000 for a very specific grant. We wanted to target, we wanted to put together we wanted to get a cybersecurity program off the ground. And when we wrote the grant, we made it very specific about doing it. We would each pursue kind of a women in technology slant. So each workforce board wants to find 5 women that we can put into a cybersecurity boot camp. The cybersecurity program, it's either 12 weeks full-time or 24 weeks part-time. It runs about $5,000 per person. And so that we found out we were approved for that on Monday. So we're going to get that money soon. And then lastly, I'm in the process. I've been approached by the Cumberland's Workforce Board They do not have a Jessica Calvert, a quality control coordinator, and they need one. And so they've been very impressed with her work, as they should be, because Jessica is very good. And so they've approached me about the idea of basically going 50-50 on her position and letting her do some of the quality control work that she does for us. So really, as their WIOA team and their career advisors enroll people and go through the arduous process of checking, dotting every I, crossing every T for eligibility and enrollment, she's the person that looks over their shoulder and makes sure that they've done that. And so we're negotiating We're negotiating that right now, and that might have a value for us of around 50,000 in terms of, what it offsets in terms of salary, travel, rent, fringe, and any other operational or indirect cost. So it's not the ink's not signed on that. They've asked for a proposal. I've sent it to them, and I'm going to see what they say. Okay. That's all I got. I'll turn it over to Hala for our financial report.
Good morning. Thanks, John. So the financial report we have as of today's for the first quarter of our fiscal year. And just for the reminder for me and everybody else that our fiscal year starts in July and ends in June. For right now in FY25 for the fiscal year, for the first 3 months, the first column has always been budget, the next one year to date for the 3 months representation of the budget. And then the third column is just actual activities, what happened through September as well. So year to date budget for September, we said 867,000 revenue. And then we received or will receive the 626, the total. One of the things that all the contracts we have are the cost reimbursements. And some contracts are for the 2 years and some are the 3 years as well. So some of the carryover items would be included into the numbers as well. But just for the simplify the conversation, so it's cost reimbursement, and the team is very precautious about incurring the cost and making sure that we charge the right amounts to the government funded contracts and what have you, and recover 100%. The goal is not to leave money on the table. That's the one thing. And the second thing, just to making sure that we are optimizing the contract. So as of September, there's no risk of leaving the money. Even though for the last year, we did not leave any money on the table. Everything was recovered. From that point right now, there's no risk for any receivable for uncollectible. So we spent around 626 for first 3 months. And then the same thing, you can see the bottom line, the expenses. So expenses are also 626 as well. As I said, these are the cost reimbursements contracts. So our revenue is based on the expenses. So more we incur, more we collect as long as we under a contract. So no risk at this point. You can see that it's a favorable variance, 240,000. It means the first quarter has always been slow because you can have accounts payable open for a little bit longer time in July and all that stuff. So with the first quarter, we're a little behind in expenses. We will recoup as soon as possible, hopefully in September, October. But again, there's no risk for leaving any money on the table at this point. Any questions, any concerns?
No, any questions?
Yes. Do you have a motion to approve the financial report?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Tori. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We got this.
Thank you.
All right, we are right on time. I get to turn it over to Brian, who's much more entertaining.
No, you got this.
Oh, I have to go. Okay. Okay, all right, almost. Okay, just so we're moving into the latter half, the second half of the board meeting where we really focus in on our 4 strategic goals. We look at our strategic goals as our contract with you. And at the beginning every year, we set aspirational goals, and then we set very specific goals for strategic goals 1 through 4. So aspirationally, at the beginning of the year, these were kind of the big goals that we wanted to go after, and we've completed both. One was to receive youth funding from the General Assembly. That actually happened, first time ever that the state has invested in a local workforce boards to do work. And then our other one was to really revise and revamp our workforce intelligence presentation, which we've now dubbed Workforce Turning Point, and we'll talk more about.
Okay. So now we'll jump into, the strategic goals. So good morning, everybody. We keep getting a message here at the office that our internet connection is unstable and the power even went out. So if you hear a glitch while we're talking here, that might explain it. We're not unstable, our internet is. But
Hey,
to get into strategic goal number 1 here, again, as John mentioned, just the commitments that we made at the beginning of the year about how we wanted to engage employers. You can see the main ways that we do that is through business service engagements, conversations with employers, any kind of touch conversation, two-way that we have, direct referrals, I should say, to employers. We just have exceeded our goal for the year and still have another quarter to go for both of those. And with our hiring events, we're moving right along. In fact, we had one just yesterday, specifically for people that had completed a CDL and trying to get a few loose ends tied up with folks that hadn't quite got into local jobs or got into CDL jobs that recognize the training that they've been through. So we pulled together employers for that, but we've had some other really big events that we're going to highlight here in just a moment. And then those workforce turning point, employer data and tactics presentations. So we were able to do that with a very small group. We have another one scheduled for this afternoon that should have about 19 people in it. We're not sure how many employers that will represent from that group, but that will keep coming. So we keep refining that, and we're going to give you guys a little preview on that. In addition, just some other things related to, developing pipelines, getting the folks that go through the boot camps put in front of employers. There's been job fairs where that's happened, specifically in Logan County and another one in the works. Getting our regional employers to host the Your Turn military soldier, transitioning soldier internships. John's got a highlight for you today on that. Getting employers to take advantage of this refugee employer engagement program that Laura Torres is over. And we've had, some crash and burns. We've been on a roller coaster. And we're going back up again. And so things are looking bright. We had a really great conversation yesterday with one. So hopefully we will be securing some contracts and getting some participants enrolled. That's for on-site ESL training opportunities. And then developing an employer satisfaction survey, just something we can use as a system consistently. And so there have been lots of ways we've engaged employers, but we want to be able to better collect how well we're serving them, how satisfied that they are with the services. So some of our hiring events have that kind of feedback, but just, we place interns at places or these data presentations, things like that. We want to be able to collect that kind of feedback and everything. But even if we've had like a one-on-one conversation, we want to be able to start getting that feedback to know how things were presented and that we're doing our job there. So before we get into the highlights, any questions on any of the year-to-date running tallies so far? Okay, now I get to share the mic and I will introduce Ms. Vernetta Douglas. And let me see if I can move the iPad so that you guys at home or office can see her. I'll just pick it up, but I'm going to turn it over to her about a big hiring event that happened August 28th. You might have even seen it on social media.
Well, I'm pretty sure you've seen it on social media. Actually, this was our 5th big job fair. Can you hear?
Well, you might have to stand up so they can see.
Oh, okay. Our big job fair, we did the first one in 2022. We had a little over 100 job seekers. On August the 28th, we had over 400. So needless to say, you can see from some of the pictures there, we had job seekers wrapped around the building. The parking was an issue. We can't accommodate the parking, and over 400 people now. I mean, the building just won't sustain it, So right now we are looking for a new venue. We looked at a couple of places. We looked at the Knightley Center. We looked at the Convention Center. they're at cost. We looked at a couple of other places, not so much at cost, free, but not really free because we have to provide the table, the chairs, the booths and all of that. We do have the next one scheduled for January the 15th. So it just depends on the new venue, if we can come up with the money, and Michael discussed that a little bit. They're thinking 3,200, 3,500 is a bit much for the event, so we'll see. So we're hopeful that we can get the new venue and have the adequate parking we need. We hope to secure at least 35 employers for the next one. So
January 15th.
January 15th. So we're holding on to that date. We're trying to move pretty quickly because the holiday season is coming. So we do have another date in mind, but hopefully we can do the January 15th date.
So our Kentucky Career Center hiring event, they do 2 big ones a year. And they continue to draw really, really large crowds, so much so that the building and the staff get overwhelmed. And the one we did last January was, I think, the coldest day of the year, and this one on August 28th was probably the hottest day of the year. So
Absolutely.
And we had, unfortunately, we could not get people into the building fast enough. Anyway, but we continue to draw a lot of people. And if you look at the pictures closely, a lot of the folks we're drawing do not speak English as their first language. So, we sometimes hear people say, we hear employers say nobody wants to work. That's not our experience here. We have people lined up out the door that want to work.
Yeah, so related to that, every year we do a specialized job fair just for folks that might have more limited English, and that's typically who we do attract. So we partner very closely with the International Center, the Refugee Resettlement Agency here in Bowling Green. They always bring busloadfuls of their clients that are actively in the process of getting placed in jobs. So we hosted this at Living Hope Baptist Church. They've been a great partner. We used them for the first time last year because they have a recreation center, and you can see kind of the scale of the size that it gives us, that nobody has to wait outside or be in the cold or the hot. Temperature was very mild that day, but we did get over 350 folks to come out, including about 52 high school students. So we do reach out to some of the local high schools and give it the opportunity for their multilingual ESL students to come, especially if they're upperclassmen. They're going to be exposed to more job fairs later in the year. This would be kind of a toe dip to know the flow and kind of who locally has jobs. And so, yeah, it was a wonderful event. We had 13 employers. We make the employers apply for the event, tell us how they're supportive to this type of workforce. And so it's a lot of players we usually know and that do also come to other events. But we tell them, bring your bilingual staff. We have a slew of interpreters that come. Laura did a wonderful job. We've never really put somebody on our team as a coordinator. And so Laura had it down. I mean, that down pat. And Anna helped them all to understand how the registration would happen and move people around kind of as groups. And so we had resource providers there as well, about 13 of those, some from throughout the region. And so, if folks have limited English, we want them to connect to the education and training providers. We don't just want to tell them that they can get a job, with where they're at now. We do want to see improvement happen and for them to know that there are lots of local resources that can help them with that. So I will point out, I mean, the hard part with all of this is to say we had, 330 or 400 nearly, coming out in August, and some of those same ones came, but a lot of people, the reputation is, well, why should I go to that? Like, I don't get a call back. They tell me I got to go apply online. And so it kind of worked against us to have huge numbers of people showing up and then not a lot of people getting callbacks or that we can even confirm on our end getting hired. And so that remains the dichotomy that, we can get a showing of people. And not all of these employers had 400 open positions. Things are really tough going into this election is the biggest thing that we keep hearing, that things are sort of on pause. But, the employers that were willing to come, we have heard that, several have made hires. But I can tell you that, at least from the New American event, that's only 2 employers that hired those 9 people. and we had 13. So we're still waiting to hear back from several more. So there could be more outcomes. And now I'll show you guys just a quick infographic that I got put together. So out of the 305 adult participants that came, you can kind of see how they were represented by language. So Spanish speakers being our largest, and then you can see the other ones there. So apparently American is a language. So that was good old monolinguals. Yeah, we are tracking that information as well. We do have a survey. It's still going to collect feedback. We collected feedback from students to know that this was helpful for them and that they could see themselves having a future in the region. So that was great. And then Anna's still collecting some feedback from people that were there that day. So we put some Amazon cards up for grabs to incentivize getting that feedback from people. And now I'll turn it over to Bianca Wilson.
So we have our Hero Center Party event in which and the Hero Center is the one that we do in Barron County in Glasgow with the housing authorities of Glasgow. So we work with Jennifer over at the Hero Center. So she reached out to Jake and I about a year and a half ago. So this is probably like our third one. She really likes to get the community together to try to help people in the housing authorities, and then of course open it up to the public. So we had about 11 employers there, and we had about 5 partners and 52 job seekers. We're still reaching out to employers to get that feedback to know how many offers we had that day. But it was a great event. The feedback that we got from a lot of our partners and employers there, they were really surprised to come out that day. So.
And I'll just say there's been a slew of employers we've hosted at the Career Center. So the doors are open there with permission. They don't just show up, but if they reach out and say they want to have a job fair just to feature themselves and try to engage with people that are going to come through the door anyway. And then our team does a great job with clients we're already in relationship with to tell them certain ones are going to be there. Burlington Coat Factory.
They were part of the employer showcase. So we're trying to do that each Tuesday.
Yeah. So each Tuesday, if you heard that from Vernetta, they're trying to have different employers come out. So we had about 150 show up between 2 days for the Burlington Coat Factory. So which was great. Again, huge showing of people turnout for just one employer there. So that continues to be a lot of the traffic that we see.
That doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, and that's no cost to come out and engage. So talking about our workforce turning point, and I'm going to let Josh do some talking on this, so we'll make sure the mic is passed to him. This is just to give you guys a little preview of kind of setting the table and kind of early in our presentation, some of the realization that we want employers to have with data. So specifically, we have to talk about baby boomers. And Josh, what do they need to know about baby boomers?
They need to know a whole lot about baby boomers, honestly. So in a little preview here, we're going to give you some of these critical stats about baby boomers and how they've sort of shaped this labor market and how their exit is starting to leave behind a real tangible impact that we can see. So let's start at the origin of the baby boomers. We're really still hearing the echoes of World War II throughout kind of society, and that reaches into our economy and into our labor market. The baby boomers are called that because it was a large population boom right around and after World War II, where the baby boomer generation really came into existence. And their biggest quality is that, boy, there are a lot of them. Around that same time, another shift also started to happen. Women were entering the workforce a lot more, and we're seeing that trend still going up and still impacting the labor force today. And there's other parts of this presentation where we touch on kind of the implications of how little the labor force has adapted to that change, even though women are very much entering the workforce at a much higher rate and have been for the last 50 plus years at this point. But as we said, we really want to focus on how the baby boomers and all of those shifts really started to shape worldview and everything. The boomers saw education as this sort of staircase where they could get into good careers and good jobs, and that really worked out for them. Then they were able to start weighing their jobs against family and things like that. And the baby boomers had a lot less children than their generational predecessors. So this boom didn't continue to boom out into the next generations. and it creates a very large sort of glut around the boomer generation where there's more people. But the way they were approaching work, they were able and willing to move for work. So they were not picking family as much, they were moving on, and they were really prioritizing work in their everyday life. And that is a big thing, the boomer work ethic that saturated the labor market and saturated this worldview that we can see. And that also ended up having an effect on employers down the road as well.
And I can take this one real quick. So yeah, what Josh was saying, I mean, so many people in the labor market get really competitive. So people were willing to work long hours. They were willing to bleed and die and devote their lives and everything, even sacrifice their families. Divorce rates, all that stuff went up, but housing was plentiful. They could go, like Josh said, but with such competition for jobs, you didn't really want outside people messing with that. So there was a lot of negativity around, you know, immigration and any pressure that was going to add of people coming to take jobs.
And then, of course, the people in the market are going to start shaping the mindset of the people hiring them. The employers that we see here, we're starting to get a very large influx of applications from people who are very eager to start entering into the labor market. And that really is going to start shaping the way that they're hiring people and that they're approaching hiring as a concept. And they really started to be able to funnel down and nitpick on who they're going to hire. And that is going to affect things a little bit down the road. I think there's a few more pictures here. Yeah. And so that's kind of depicting their real funnel down into employers are starting to get a lot more picky about what they're going into. And like I said before, that's going to lead into a lot of their decisions while they're hiring and while they're retaining their employees. A big thing from that is that they're not going to focus a whole lot on training at work anymore. They're going to decide that they can just find the skill set that they need existing within the labor market already, and then they're not going to provide those skills to their employees at all. Another impact kind of that came from that is that they're not going to worry as much about wages either. They're going to put out their wage and they're going to say people are going to come, and if they want it, they'll take it. And if they don't, someone else will come in and take it. And it created this sort of very inflexibility within a hiring mindset that the baby boomers sort of helped to create alongside these hiring managers within this context.
Yeah, so with super detailed job descriptions, super detailed, qualifications and education requirements, systems that filtered those loads of applicants that would come in for a lot of jobs, wanting to have people preloaded with skills and then saying the job is what it is, it pays what it is, it requires what it requires. Our question back to the company is, are these worldviews still the same for the job seekers? Their mindset still, I can go anywhere I want for work. Is education still going to lead me exactly guarantee me what I want to have? And then likewise, our employers still expecting people to have that mindset and still using the same systems and processes. So you can see we're trying to position it of, we didn't just get here overnight and things have been bad for a while, but you can't keep expecting the same results because we just don't have the 21st century job seeker. It's just not in the same climate where things are as competitive. And then there's a population boom and spike and all of that. And so you can see here, Josh, I don't know what you want to say about this, but I got one more data thing to put in. Now you can talk to it.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of to that, is the boomer worldview or the boomer effect still happening here? We can see that as the boomers are exiting the labor market, 16-year-olds and up are starting to enter, and they're not filling all of those gaps that the boomers are leaving behind. As the boomers leave, there aren't enough new people entering the labor market. And remember that influx of boomers is really a big thing that started to shape these worldviews and shape these hiring practices. So now that we're in sort of an opposite situation, the expectations around work and the way that people seeking jobs are going about it is going to change a lot. And so that boomer mindset and that boomer hiring practice is probably going to be fading out of the labor market here soon, or else it should be for employers to be able to have employees.
Yeah, so again, assuming that somebody who turns 65 is done at that point, and someone who turns 16 is in, that's the net difference. In our region, Josh has drilled down and looked at the numbers, and we kind of assume it might be a kind of a net, gain loss. It may not be as drastic as this. But there's other factors. I mean, things have gotten more expensive. People might need to stay and work longer. People might want to stop a full-time job and get into a part-time job. And so there's still some other things that could shake out that could maybe have it where 65-year-olds stay in the labor, market longer. But 16-year-olds aren't getting jobs as much, and teenagers aren't getting jobs as much as they used to. So I think the same data that we've been looking at says that there's been a delay of several years now. Many people, their first job is like average like 20, 21 years old. So, and there's all kinds of factors for that. And Whitney and John got to speak to some legislators about the difficulties in just securing a driver's license here in Kentucky. So we know that's got to be exacerbating the issue too. If you can't get access to go get scheduled to take a test, then how are you going to get to work unless it's right outside your door? So any comments, feedback, questions on that? There's lots more. There's an hour of this. And then there's a bunch of talk back. So, but it's data driven, and then we are giving them observations on things we're seeing, like the job fair turnout and things. But we're trying to position ourselves to be not the solution to everything, but the connector. That, as our agency can't solve internal things like flexibility and hiring practices, but we can get you candidates. But we can also tell you what it's like when giving you 20 candidates at a time and nobody gets a call back, how frustrating that is for our program staff and our partner staff and things like that are led to believe you have an opening, and then how did anybody get in? And so it's got to be reciprocal. But it's aiming for executive level folks to know that this is this is what happens in our ecosystem. And so to help give a preview to things. So try not to scare them to death. Hopefully it ends on a positive note.
What WIOA says that a local workforce must do is provide labor market information, which we've always done, and usually comes from a source like KY Stats or Jobs EQ. We can pull and provide that very easily to anybody that needs labor market information. We can provide it, but this is labor market information on steroids. This is, this is kind of our team trying to go above and beyond to help our employer community. We recognize most employers, to use a military term, they're in a close fight. They're in a knife fight. They got to get through today. They got to get through this week. But we have a math problem in terms of the labor force, and executive level folks need to be looking deep and need to be figuring this out. The workforce, it's not going to change. It's already changing underneath our feet. The baby boomers are almost gone. Their ethic is almost gone. There's new sheriffs in town. They have a different worldview on work-life balance, on flexibility. The younger generation, we all have our complaints, but they're very entrepreneurial, and they do want to work. They just want to work differently than what we're used to, and that's the message we're trying to get across. We got a math problem, and we need to look deep, and we need to kind of recognize how can our local employers recognize this issue and start to make and adjust for these changes that are happening as we speak.
Yeah, the most promising way to do that is to look at who already resides here. So housing isn't as available, and you can't rely as much on people moving here from across the country or wherever. That who are our local residents that are not working, and what are some of the barriers that they have. So we get much more into introducing, these different focus populations that we have, which feeds us into strategic goal number 2 and how we're trying to work and align programming and training for youth and adults. So we don't have a highlight specific under this category for today, but just to keep you guys up to date on our running totals and tallies here, you can see the folks that we do have in our WIOA, our special WIOA, the tornado grant, which will end at the end of this year. And then that Quest grant that we do have one for justice involved, and that gets a lot of our focus when we show highlights and things that are going on in jails, but we do have a youth one as well. And we had some folks trained earlier in the year on that. Engaging, instead of showing, high school or college, we've lumped those 16 to 24-year-olds together. And you can see there how we're doing and how referrals are going with that population. And we just have a new database Shannon Gotke, our youth coach, is using to try to really keep up with the hires and everything. So that's still a work in progress. But some of the project-based things, or that regional high school job fair, which we did in May and we've highlighted before. You can see the numbers there, and then assisting some of our local schools with some of the initiatives and special funding grants that they have that have reached out to us to ask us to be involved in that. And then another one who's reached out often is our Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce with their hiring event they do for graduating high school seniors, which already happens, and you can see the numbers. And then Matt is going to be involved next week, right, with the 8th grade experience event where 8th graders come next door to us still and hear it nicely and have a huge show and tell, get to meet training providers, employers, and really start to plant some seeds for what's going to be possible here in the region and opportunities that they have. So a lot of regional schools are engaged through that event. And I know Barron County has one as
Yes.
well.
I just didn't mention that. November 15th, is that right, Justin? It's on our Friday, yes.
And I know Justin, you texted me at the last board meeting and I told Shannon about that. So I think she's connected to get involved with that.
That's hosted by the Barron Inc.
There.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just happens to be on our campus.
Yeah, we want to be involved.
All right, so I know we have a lot under strategic goal number 4, but to go through strategic goal number 3, this was the big focus at the last board meeting. So this is about how we try to increase workforce participation. A lot of it is with our remaining focus population. So with New Americans, you can see just the astronomical amount of engagements and services that are being provided, but we do have 2 refugee focus grants Laura and Etha are involved with, and results are still coming in as far as their efforts. But you know, just the amount of referrals to companies. John put a goal of 2,000. I can't remember how many we had last year, but obviously we far exceeded that. And then the amount of people that we can confirm have been getting job offers through those results is there. Military Fort Campbell, this is you know, we don't have a full-time dedicated person anymore, so John's taking the lead on a lot of this, and he'll give you a highlight. But we have 4 interns, right? Three that are getting ready to happen. Did we have one earlier in the year? Had one before this board meeting.
Bowling Green Police Department's
Had one. Okay, 2. So we've had about 4 or 5, and then by the end of this year, there should be about 4 or 5 people placed into regional internships here through that special Your Turn internship. So we hope to get 10 for the year, but a lot of momentum happening here at the last part of the year. So again, John's shouldering a lot of that. So, and then our justice involved, there's 2 different ways that we're working with this. One, an everyday one, and the other one I said is, you know, kind of on occasion with the Quest grant, those work ready boot camps. You can see we're running over 60 people now. So we far exceeded our goal, and we got more money to keep going into next year with that. And so we have how many people getting trained as we speak? 16, yeah, okay. And then with Brittany Hippler, the Reentry and Employment Services Division of Adult Education, the running tally on all of those events that they've done this year, and all of these individuals getting engaged with jails, recovery centers, just in general in the public. A lot of referral mechanisms going on, outreach happening, but to get them referred to our career development office with people at Burnetta's team and level. But you can see there at the bottom right, there was a goal to set out to try to get into as many of the counties and jails as possible with programming. And so people, as of today, can get involved in any of the counties that we have in South Central. All of our partners are getting engaged. There's targeted orientations happening in 8 of our 10 counties, which means there are repeat events. Sort of like what we've typically done with rapid response, where we get partners to come and meet with job seekers that are getting separated from their employer. But this is a positive thing of bringing the same partners to the table and getting them all under one roof and promoting the bejesus out of it on Facebook as well as we can to let people know you can show up at one place and get connected to all of these providers. And so that's happening in 8, again, of the 10 counties in our region. And then all of our jails are engaged with ID programming that's going to help transition inmates to getting IDs before they leave, and pre-release classes, which is where a whole lot more partners come. And it's about a 2-hour show and tell of all of the service providers and things. So they are just, and I mean, so saturated with information that they should have all kinds of options for when they get out and knowing where to go. And we're getting stories of people that are coming out and heading right to the door of these places. So I know it's tremendous work to get information out, but So many of the people will say they've never heard of this, or they've been in jail several times. This was never told to them before. They had no clue. And we always have people that come from other areas that are detained here. And so we can tell them, you might have a life here in South Central, give this a look. So lots of programming going on there. Now I'll turn it over to John to talk about these interns that are getting positioned.
Yeah, so we have an approved program in place with Fort Campbell, with the Fort Campbell Army Career Skills Program Office. And we put together this, I've been reporting to you guys on this for a while now, but we branded the program Your Turn. And the way this works is within the Department of Defense and within the Army, service members can participate in an internship with a company once they get within 180 days of separation. And so there's quite a number of programs at Fort Campbell already, but we wanted to make an application, and our intent was let's act as an intermediary and let's find service members and give them unique opportunities to do internships with our local companies. And so there's 3 right here. I've got about another 6 that are kind of in the pipeline that are at various levels of approval, but we've got 3 here that are going to be starting in the next little bit. So you can see on the left, Sergeant Catherine Marinho, she had reached out and she said, I'm interested in doing a grant writing internship. And I was like, oh gosh, I've never heard of anybody that wanted to do that. But I ended up talking to the Barren River Area Development District because I know they've got some folks that do grant writing over there, and they were very gracious and said, yeah, we'd love to host. And so I set up an interview. Interview went well. And she's gotten all her approvals through her chain of command. We've got this thing set, and she'll be starting here. Actually, she's going to start October 28th. There in the middle, Sergeant Angelica Pagan. She's actually at Fort Sill right now, but she reached out and she asked to do an HR internship, and that we're on plan C. Like the first 2 options I had for her that looked promising fell through. And so she was so persistent. I said, okay, you're going to do it with us. So we're going to host her. We're going to let her, kind of move her around between our staff. I'm going to have her spend some time in the Kentucky Career Center with you guys, with Matt. I got to give you some details on it, but we're going to move her around and let her see what we do. But her family is actually from the Clarksville area. So she's, when she starts, she'll come over from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, stay with family, and commute back and forth from Clarksville. And then Captain LaBelle, she's a West Point graduate, physics degree, very sharp. But she asked for a media internship. And so, again, I had to look around a little bit and ended up getting her, the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce, they do a lot in terms of, they put together a couple of annual publications. And so I made that suggestion to them. They were interested. They did an interview. Interview went well for all parties. And so we're going to get her paired up with them starting in January. That's completely approved. The only one that it's not 100% approved is Angelica there in the middle, but we're really close to getting her across the finish line. And then I've got a couple others that are in the queue. We've got a kind of an off the shelf one with Logan Aluminum, but I haven't found anybody for you yet. But I can talk to you a little bit more about that. But we're looking.
This is great.
Yeah, we really had to shift. We had at the beginning of the year when we had full-time staff at Fort Campbell, we had big lofty goals. But once the funding for that position dried up, we had to basically go, okay, well, what can we do? So now we've gone from kind of a quantity focus to a quality focus. So we're really just getting down. We're dealing with individuals on an individual level. Where can we get them placed into an internship? So if you're an employer that is interested, let's have a conversation.
Is this considered, Justin, is this considered a credential when they go through this program?
There's no official credential. It doesn't cost the employer anything other than the time it takes to host somebody and mentor them, and invest a little bit of energy into them. The service member gets a chance to experience something in the civilian side. They get to put something on their resume that's going to make them competitive once they do finally get out.
Mm-hmm. Any other Discussion, questions, anything on strategic goal number 3? Okay, so as we transition to strategic goal 4, and I turn it back over to John, I mean, this one's about our financial growth and quality delivery system, but I think I just want to give Veronica Hawthorne a round of applause if we could, because of all that audit stuff. I know that was a tremendous load on her.
You only knew.
Yeah. Oh. We don't always get to reflect Jessica's work and Rhonda's work into these strategic goals that we have, but my goodness, to say that it was a clean audit, I know that was a lot of work, and she had to do a lot of explaining of how things happen to introduce that to somebody brand new to it all. So, all right, I'll turn it back over to John here.
Okay, so just again, these are the goals that were set at the beginning of the year. We are well on our way with most of these. So I'm not going to dwell on these. Okay, so what I want to do is have a conversation with you about WIOA performance. And this is really a conversation I haven't really had with the board. So I got to set this up a little bit. The Department of Labor, through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, it's in the name, they want state and local workforce boards to be innovative. And they really encourage innovation. And we, as a local workforce board, we hang on to that word innovation, and we really go for it as much as we can. We take a lot of pride in our approach. However, when you get down to brass tacks and say, well, okay, what does the Department of Labor actually measure? This is what they measure. We have 3 lines of funding: adult, dislocated worker, and youth. And in each one of those lines of funding, they measure these 5 things. They look at, and this is consistent across all 3 lines of funding. What's the employment rate second quarter after somebody exits out of a WIOA program? What's the employment rate after, fourth quarter after they exit? What are their median earnings? Did they obtain a credential within 4 quarters after exit? And what were the measurable skill gains? And so what you see here are 3 columns there on the right. So one is the state rate. So what happens is Kentucky as a state negotiates, either percentages or dollar amount for each one of these criteria. And then the state, Kentucky, turns around and says, okay, workforce area, here's what we think your rates need to be. And we get to negotiate those and haggle those rates back and forth. So you can see the state rate is what the state has to try to achieve with the Department of Labor, but where it says South Central rates, those are what we had negotiated. And our rates, you can see our rates in some cases are significantly higher than the state rate. And that's because they look at the previous year's performance and go, well, we think you can obtain that higher, either that higher percentage or that higher dollar amount because you did it last year. So you can see for this period, PY23, which started in July 23 and concluded June of this year, what our rates were. And then just in the last couple of weeks, you can see there in the final column on the right, what we did. And so really out of the 15 criteria there, we hit 14 of 15. The one that we were a little bit underneath on was that adult credential attainment within 4 quarters after exit. So our goal was 82%. We came in at a little over 78%. So we missed our goal. We still exceeded the state goal, but that's where we came in. So we've been getting these this type of performance we get every year. Really, the shift that had happened in the last year is, when I first came on board, and my first full year here in 2019, really 2019 through really 2023, the state would just say, "Here's your results," and really there was no other mention of it. There was no okay. And largely we were getting good grades on all of them. And really, I always looked at this and said, okay, well, this only looks at WIOA. This measures only a fraction of what we need to be doing as an organization. That's why when you look at all the other, go forward a slide, when you look at all the other strategic goals that we've got and all the criteria that we set forth with you guys as a board, we're trying to do way more than what the Department of Labor says, this is what you have to do. So if you go back one time. But the thing that's happened though, is in the last 6 months, the state is really starting to put a lot more emphasis on performance. Now in the policies and in all the agreements that we have between our organization as a local workforce board and the state, I mean, there can be repercussions if you continuously miss your marks, right? So if you miss in one category like we did, I might get something in writing that says, hey, you gotta do better. If you don't, if you miss this again next year, we're gonna put you on a performance improvement plan. If you missed it for 3 years in a row, then they can have conversations with us about reducing our funding or doing something to put a little bit of teeth into enforcing this. At the very worst case scenario is if you're really bad and you're really atrocious at this, they're going to fire the whole board. They're going to reset the whole organization. That almost never happens. But there are provisions within the law that says that do say that can happen. So anyway, that's where we are. That 78% where we just missed, when we peeled it back, we missed it by 2 people. One thing that's new too is it's just been in the last few months where we've actually been given access to the data system where we can see this. In all previous years, the state would say, here's your numbers, here's your percentages. And we'd go, okay, but where's this come from? Like how do we had no way of knowing if it was correct. When you look at a percentage, we didn't know who was being measured in the numerator and the denominator. We couldn't look at that. Now we can. We've been given access. Jessica has quickly become an expert on that. As we were leading up to this, I mean, I think Jessica identified like a dozen, when we were looking at all the data, Jessica identified around a dozen different discrepancies that we couldn't fix at the local level. We needed the state to fix it, and they did. And that really got us green in a lot of categories. We've also identified instances where there were people showing up in our numbers that they weren't from South Central, they were from other workforce areas, and we had to get the state to get them moved in the system and get them out of our, we didn't want them counting against us, especially if they were bad. We might want them if they were maintenance. But we didn't have, there's much, I guess what I'm saying is on this performance piece, there's much more emphasis on this at the state level. They've hired some people, they've given us access. And so in turn, all right, we're going to ramp up. If this is that important, we're going to ramp it up. And one of the other things that we've done is we didn't create a new meeting. We canceled an existing meeting that really wasn't doing much for us anymore. We've created what we're calling a performance meeting. So once every couple of weeks, we're bringing, it's our team, Matt's team, somebody from Vernetta's team, and we're coming down and going, okay, let's look at this as a team. Who's in the pipeline? Who are we training in WIOA? Are they in a training program? Are they in an internship? When do they end? When they end, let's get them lined up for a job. Let's make sure that we're meeting those employment, we're getting the right employment outcomes. Let's make sure people are on track for credential attainment and measurable skill gain. So,
John, the change in mentality at the state level was always, or seemed to always be, you're hitting your 75% goal, great. Let's clap and move on. And ours changed in the last couple of years has been, that is great. What about that other 25%? Where could we have done better to get that other 25%? And we needed that specific drill down data to the individual to get that. That's how we were able to obtain that.
Yeah, one of the ironies in all this is that WIOA is meant for the people that have the barriers. It's meant for people to overcome barriers, the people that are hardest to serve. And so one of the predicaments it puts us in is if we really care about performance, then if we want to meet our performance goals, we got to be somewhat judicious about who we say yes to and spend WIOA money on. Somebody that's really hard to serve and has a lot of barriers, if they've got that many barriers or they're really that hard to serve, they're probably not a good bet with WIOA. So WIOA is meant to bet on people, but if you bet on the hardest folks that need the most help, you're probably going to miss your they might not finish. They might not go get that job. Something else, there might be a lot of things that impact. So, that's a little bit of the predicament it puts us in. We want to help people, but we also have to be, it's one thing to be eligible. It's another thing to say, we're still going to, not everybody that's eligible is somebody you're going to go say yes to. I mean, that's part of the predicament it puts us in.
And it also makes us understand the training hosts, let's call them, right? Training providers, businesses that might host internships. I mean, if those continually don't yield placement, employment. So one thing that quickly happened is Jessica looked at, and it just happened to be with all of the different training providers, there have been for years an opportunity for people to go to online healthcare training, self-paced. I think they have 6 months, and then it can get extended up to a year, and after that it can even get extended again. We had only half the people that we were enrolling finishing those and completing those, and only half the ones that finished were getting placed into healthcare jobs. So there's a tremendous need for healthcare workers, but for some reason there was a disconnect of people that finished not getting into the jobs. And so we're like, let's make this easy on ourselves. Let's quit enrolling people in online healthcare training for the moment until we can figure out a better way to support them, or screen participants to be able to handle how to learn in an online environment, self-paced. Because just like telling your teenager to go learn something online. I mean, I made my kid do the driver's exam thing, class in person, because he could have done the online self-paced. I was like, nope, you're sitting down for 4 hours, you're knocking it out. That takes discipline to, if you don't have a hard, fast time that you have to show up for class. So we recognize that and immediately pump the brakes on that.
Okay, well, let's go back one and just again, I'll just put tie a bow on this. Again, on the left, performance, we're really paying much more attention to it. But again, we've never ignored the WEO performance piece. I mean, we've always done pretty well on it, but I've always looked at it. If you just looked at, if that's all we did as an organization, shame on us. I mean, there are workforce boards in this country. That's all they do. Everything revolves around the performance that you see on the left. And that's the extent of what they do. They basically, they administer a WEOA contract, and they make sure their WEOA provider, their version of career team, is meeting these marks, and not a whole lot more. And I always said, that's kind of, you're just looking at things through a soda straw if that's all you're doing. Like we can and are doing way more than what's being measured by the Department of Labor. All right, and this is the last thing I got, and then we'll kind of get into the question and public comment period. But we do have a lot of things coming up between now and next June that are going to be pretty heavy lifts, and some of them are going to involve, definitely will need to involve our board and even our judge executives. So we're coming due to update both our local strategic plan and our regional innovation plan. This is a once every 4-year requirement, and so if you go online and look at our strategic plan, that was a 2021 product, and we're going to be updating that. So the state has already updated their plan, and so we've got that as a reference, and we're going to start leaning in on that here. I think we'll start here in the next couple of weeks, getting our data, getting our framework. Structurally, I think it's going to be pretty similar to the 4 strategic goals that we've got now, but we're certainly going to update it. But the strategic plan, I mean, that does involve, bringing together board members and judge executives and creating buy-in. There has to be a public comment period once we've got it draft. Bottom line, we'll have to get it all approved and in place prior to June 30th. So that'll be a heavy lift. We are going to have to recertify our board. That's actually not a very heavy lift. We'll update our partnership agreement that we have with our judge executives. We don't have to update our interlocal agreement. We actually have 1 more year, but generally speaking, it's a good idea. If you're going to update your partnership agreement, go ahead and update your interlocal agreement. And both of those agreements really spell out the relationship between the local workforce board and our judge executives, since they have fiscal oversight. They actually have financial liability. That's the reason they have fiscal oversight, is because they do have financial liability if we misspend, if we do something incorrectly with these federal dollars. We know we're gonna have to update our memorandum of understanding and infrastructure funding agreement. Those are documents that get updated every 1 to 2 years and have to do with our Kentucky Career Center. Kentucky Career Center recertification. We anticipate that we're gonna have to work on that as well. That'll be led by our one-stop operator, Mr. Frank Garabato. That as part of that, we have to have a team of people that come in and certify the Career Center. One of those team members has to come from our board, and then we'll have 2 that are from outside agencies. And there along the bottom, you just see various other administrative things that are on our radar between now and next June.
I'll just jump in and say, I know so many of you, if not everybody, is thinking, where can I jump in? I mean, we report a lot to you guys at these meetings. But seriously, like helping us draft that strategic plan would be huge. That'd be a wonderful opportunity. So where you guys can actually, lend influence to what you want to see happen in your area, your neck of the woods here in the region. What you'd liked, that you've seen this board do as an organization, what you want to envision that we could do or push or strive to do. I mean, we have to keep it kind of general, but we can get specific in certain areas too. And so I think what John and I don't want to do is let's just say, it looks awesome. Here, guys, approve it. Because then that won't really be involving our stakeholders. So you guys are the biggest stakeholders that we have with this, and we would love to have your involvement with it. And your defense whenever there's going to be all that public comment that comes in. No, but seriously, it needs to work for the region and something that we're proud of. And that'll frame the discussions that we present every time with you guys at a board meeting, with if there's any reconfiguration of our goals, then that's what we'll update you on every time.
Okay. We are right on the nose, I think.
Yeah. All right. So before the Wi-Fi probably dies, what resonated? What are you guys leaving with? What impressed you today? Or what impression did you have from all of this information today? Feel free to unmute your mics, even if you're in the room.
Great job on the audit.
Thank you. Big sigh of relief.
It's always evident that there's so much good work going on, and I'm very interested in hearing more about Josh's the data that Josh put together. Did we say when those are?
We have not scheduled the next one,
Okay.
so we need to do that. Yeah, thank you.
We did a pilot. We worked with the Bowling Green Chamber to do a pilot, and then I mean, immediately they liked it so much that they scheduled this afternoon for a second round. So we're tracking 19 folks have registered for that within, but yeah, we plan on.
Does that start at 3? Maybe I'm registered.
Yes.
Okay.
So you are ready.
So we'll be really, I mean, we've been, after that first, there's been a lot of updates. So we're still, it's a really good presentation, but we continue to refine it. But it's coming out. It'll be coming out to all the other counties. We'll be reaching out. Obviously, again, this is meant to be for employers. It's really meant to be for decision makers. So we really love to see executive level folks kind of get this, because that's their role, right? If you're an executive, you got to be thinking not only about today, but about tomorrow. And this is a presentation about today and tomorrow.
Yeah, what we realized, I think we've said this in another meeting, but when we realized we needed to elevate this, we've got a lot of great relationships with HR. I mean, it's just about, you look around the room and people on our staff, we're mostly dealing with HR level when we talk about our company and employer engagements, but getting this information to an audience that doesn't normally hear it or doesn't normally engage with us. So that's where we realized, in addition to HR, we wanted to take this to. So our ask is, even if we'd be willing to probably go county by county. I mean, nothing in here is county specific, it's regional at this point. And it applies to everybody just the same. Some industries are going to have bigger impact than others. We're going to need to maybe have more concerns with population changes and stuff. But our ask is, if you, with your local chamber, we typically start there, but we need execs to show up. So it can't just be, a small announcement and blurb in a newsletter that doesn't really get noticed. Like, personal invitations and excitement and energy behind this to just get people to the table. That's what works better than just saying there's another event going on. Can you spare, a few minutes? It's got to be articulated what this is really designed to try to do. And again, it's not going to offer all the solutions, but it should be opening eyes and increasing engagement with us and our partners. Or at least directives that the companies, because we do want to get people that don't even engage with us now to come hear this information. So, but we rely on others because we don't know who they are either, who needs to hear this. So, any other comments? Oh, sorry. Someone online? Okay.
I love the internships. Those are 3 very qualified people that you're placing. And I know it's not easy to go through that process for internships, but from the healthcare standpoint, if we get through the process of getting them placed, they more often than not will stay with the organization. So that's a great thing you've already. So I know it's a lot of work.
All right. Any non-board members have any feedback or comments that they want to make?
Hey, Brian, if I could, I would just like to thank the board for, oh, sorry. Okay, this one. I would just like to thank the board for walking the walk. I don't know if you noticed, I tried to be as subtle as I could, but I had to leave because I had surgery and my neck is spasming. So I have to work remotely. I have to lay back to do my job. And the fact that that's okay, the fact that you all work with me so I can do that and keep working, that's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you.
We love you, Leslie. It's Amy.
You all that.
All right, so here's something too. We're gonna have our next meeting, and it's the big end of the year show and tell shindig with food. And so, location to be determined, but more than likely in Bowling Green, although I think we may, entertain other options, but it'll be offered hybridly for those that absolutely need it, but we do try to showcase all of the work that's happened for the whole year. And who went to it last year that remembers? All right. What stood out from last year? The non-staff who can't answer. What stood out from last year's presentation in December? Come on, yeah, it was just a year ago.
I do remember the guests commenting on how much they were impressed by everything.
Yeah.
There was a flower presentation.
There was a flower, yeah, there was a coordination of Anna from an employer. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all so much for being here, and we will see you back on December 12th. Go ahead and adjourn.